It was 11:04 p.m. when Jennifer Hartley saw the flashing red and blue lights in her rearview mirror on a dark stretch of Highway 29 between Charlottesville and Lynchburg, Virginia. She'd been driving home from visiting her parents, a route she took every few weeks, and the highway at this hour was nearly empty, just her headlights cutting through the rural Virginia darkness. Jennifer immediately assumed she'd been speeding, though her speedometer showed she was only going 63 in a 65 zone, but she signaled and pulled onto the shoulder anyway. Her heart rate elevated the way it always was when being pulled over by police, even though she'd done nothing wrong. She put the car in park, turned on her interior light, and placed her hands on the steering wheel where they'd be visible, following all the protocols her father had taught her growing up. She watched in her side mirror as a figure emerged from the vehicle behind her. It looked like a police cruiser, had the light bar and the general shape, but something felt off in a way Jennifer couldn't quite articulate. The officer, if that's what he was, approached her window slowly, and when he got close enough for Jennifer to see his face illuminated by her dome light, her unease intensified. He was wearing what looked like a police uniform, dark blue with some kind of badge, but the details were wrong. The patches didn't look official, and he wasn't wearing a body camera or utility belt with radio and equipment that every cop she'd ever encountered had worn. "License and registration," he said, his voice flat. No good evening or explanation for why he'd stopped her, and he was standing too close to her window, leaning down in a way that felt invasive rather than procedural. Jennifer's hand moved toward her glove compartment, where she kept her registration, but something made her hesitate. Maybe it was the way his eyes were scanning the interior of her car, like he was looking for something specific. Maybe it was the absence of professional courtesy, or maybe it was just instinct screaming at her that this wasn't right. "Can you tell me why you pulled me over?" Jennifer asked, her voice steady despite the fear building in her chest. The man's expression hardened slightly, annoyed by the question. "You were speeding. License and registration, now." But Jennifer had been watching her speedometer obsessively, knew she hadn't been speeding, and the more she looked at this man, the more details jumped out as wrong. His shoes were regular sneakers, not police boots. His badge looked like the kind you could buy online for $30. His cruiser behind them didn't have proper police markings, just the light bar on top and generic black paint. "I'm going to call 911 to confirm you're actually a police officer," Jennifer said, reaching for her phone, and the man's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The facade of authority dropped away, replaced by naked aggression. "Do not call anyone. Turn off your car and get out right now," he said, his hand moving to something on his belt that Jennifer couldn't see clearly, but assumed was a weapon. Jennifer made a split-second decision. She threw her car into drive without another word, her foot slamming the accelerator, and she heard the fake police cruiser shouting behind her, heard him running back to his vehicle, but she didn't stop. She kept her foot on the gas, pushing her Honda Civic to 80, then 90, watching her rearview mirror as the fake police cruiser's lights came back on and he started pursuing her. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely steer, but she grabbed her phone and dialed 911 with one hand, explaining in rapid gasps that someone in a fake police car had tried to pull her over on Highway 29, that she was being chased, that she needed real police immediately. The dispatcher asked her to describe the vehicle, asked her exact location using mile markers she could barely read in the dark, and told her to keep driving toward Lynchburg, where there was a police station just off the highway at the next major exit. The chase continued for 3 terrifying miles, the fake police cruiser staying right behind her, sometimes pulling alongside like he was trying to force her off the road. And Jennifer was crying and screaming and praying that she wouldn't crash, that real police would arrive before this man caught her. Then, suddenly, she saw actual police lights ahead. 2 Virginia State police cruisers were blocking the highway at the exit, positioned across both lanes, and Jennifer slammed on her brakes and skidded to a stop right in front of them, while the fake police cruiser behind her immediately veered off onto the shoulder, trying to flee in the opposite direction. The troopers pursued him, and Jennifer sat in her car sobbing while one trooper stayed with her, asking if she was okay, telling her she was safe, telling her they'd gotten him. They'd caught the man less than a mile down the road after he'd tried to abandon his vehicle and run into the woods. His name was Michael Breslin, 42 years old. No actual law enforcement background, but a history of assault and attempted kidnapping from 10 years earlier in North Carolina. His vehicle was a decommissioned Crown Victoria he'd bought at auction and outfitted with a cheap light bar purchased online. And in the trunk, police found rope, duct tape, a taser, and a handgun he wasn't legally permitted to carry due to his felony record. Detectives told Jennifer she was the fourth woman to report being targeted by this fake officer in the past 6 weeks, but she was the first one who'd refused to comply and had driven away.
The other 3 had gotten out of their vehicles, believing they were being pulled over by legitimate police. And Breslin had assaulted them, robbed them, and in one case held a woman captive for 2 hours in his vehicle before releasing her in a different location. He'd been escalating, and investigators believed Jennifer had interrupted what would have been his first planned abduction with intent to hold the victim longer than a few hours. The prosecutor described Breslin as a serial predator who'd specifically studied police procedures enough to pass casual inspection from victims who weren't paying close attention, and he'd chosen rural highways with minimal traffic where he could operate for extended periods without being noticed by actual law enforcement. Jennifer's decision to question his authority, to notice the wrong details, to call 911 instead of complying, had saved her life and likely saved future victims because Breslin was now facing multiple felony charges, including impersonating a police officer, attempted kidnapping, assault, possession of a weapon by a felon, and aggravated stalking. The trial happened 9 months later, and Jennifer testified about every detail that had seemed wrong, about her instinct to verify his identity, about the way his expression changed when she said she was calling 911, and the jury took less than 3 hours to return guilty verdicts on all counts. Breslin was sentenced to 32 years in prison, and the judge specifically noted that Jennifer's awareness and quick thinking had prevented what could have been a series of increasingly violent crimes. Jennifer started speaking at community safety workshops after the trial, teaching people how to verify if they're being pulled over by a legitimate officer. Real police cars have detailed markings and unit numbers. Officers wear full uniforms with name tags and badge numbers. They have radios and body cameras, and they will never be angry if you tell them you're calling 911 to verify their identity before getting out of your vehicle. In fact, many departments encourage this if you're being pulled over in an isolated area at night. She tells audiences that if something feels wrong, if details don't match, if the officer seems angry rather than professional, you have every right to keep driving slowly with your hazards on until you reach a populated area or a police station. And you should call 911 immediately to report the situation so dispatchers can verify if there's an actual traffic stop in progress. She emphasizes that real officers will understand and appreciate your caution, but predators impersonating police will become aggressive and demanding because they're operating on a time limit before you realize the deception. And that anger, that urgency, that deviation from professional protocol is the biggest tell that you're not dealing with legitimate law enforcement, but with someone who wants you vulnerable and isolated.